Well, Happy New Year to both you, Scott Baker, and Sierra Holland.
Happy New Year to you as well.
I have a question, Mikey.
Yes.
When you attach two Lego bricks together, the magnetism that holds them together, like
The word you're looking for is clutch power, by the way.
that's exactly what I was. That's the point. You just answered the question.
Oh, okay.
So what other key but lesser known fact about Legos should we know?
Well, there's so many different ways that you can
Right.
kind of go deep on it, right?
All right, that's enough. All right, so the point, Sierra, is that Mikey actually could go on for hours and hours and
No,
hours.
the point is how much more attractive you became to me just by asking me.
That's it, right? And in fact, you were like, it's clutch power, and then even when you knew that I was kind of teeing you up for that, that meant that I actually did a little bit of detective work to figure that out. You were like, wow, I've got him. I finally have him into the Lego world. Yeah.
Right.
So
You
the
don't
point,
really care.
the point for all of this is that in our field note, now we've gotten really into the high impact field notes here. You know, the one yesterday on why to be a leader in the first place did huge, in terms of the readership. So now we're kind of starting the year, how to make yourself more interesting in the new year. So I'm sure everybody watching, you're all fascinating. Clearly we are, but you could be a little bit more fascinating. So the field note is going to kind of say, well, what matters most in terms of charisma, interest in the other person, some area of particular knowledge, like Lego. What's the magic mix here? So now, Sierra, you don't have to like confess to something as sort of bizarre as a Lego mastery, but do you have an area that we don't know about, like where you're really knowledgeable?
I think I'd say, it's an interesting question. The areas where I am really knowledgeable are almost too niche, I would say, because when I find something interesting, I just go really deep on it, whether it's a theory about media effects, whether it's, a movie I just watched and
Right.
wanting to understand how they put it together, how they thought about the costumes, how they thought about design, how they
right.
thought about cast. So, I mean, while I'm a songwriter and that could be an area, but that's
I didn't know that.
unique.
Did you know that, Mikey, that Sierra's a songwriter?
I knew that what we talked about a lyricist in the past.
Yeah.
And one that I thought, oh, you should know about this guy. And because of the way he freestyles.
Yeah.
And so from that conversation a couple of years ago, I knew that she had written a couple songs, but I don't know any of your songs. I don't think I've actually heard you perform. Whatever your Spotify channel is that you're hiding.
You're hiding from us, right?
I've not unearthed it.
All right. So here's the question, Mikey. You kind of set up this thing about like somebody could be interesting. I'm fascinated by this person. They could be interested in you or in the conversation and really focused, and you feel like finally there's somebody who gets me, right? And then the field note is interesting. It is adding this element, and I'm kind of jumping to the end of it, but it's important to do that for us to figure it out, which is that the field note is proposing that beyond the service levels that we all know of the Dale Carnegie, be interested in the other person and get them to talk about themselves, which is all do that. That when you have a particular viewpoint or vantage or a depth of knowledge around something that makes other people say, oh, there's a value add in my paying attention to you, because you actually have something that's going to either help me professionally, deepen my intellectual interest, maybe some other area of my fascination. I think I'm the one person that I'd be like, Sierra, I think we could talk about media effects. Let's keep going deeper on that. Maybe not everybody at the party, but yeah. I would. So I think that's the question here is do you think enough people are past the point? I feel like you almost have to be past the point of, am I good at actually asking other people questions about themselves before I'm allowed to get to this next level of now let me tell you about my area of expertise?
I think that it's more about a level of self-control that says, am I willing to allow other people to become interested in me? Yes.
Yeah.
So at a party last night, I had 50 questions for the person that I was talking to, almost to the point where I felt like I need to apologize for being right. And then at some point in most normal human interactions, there's this need to be like, I've been talking about myself too much. I need to ask about you.
Right.
And the more I kind of even deflect there and like turn it back on them, the more it creates this need. Like, I have to know about you. I have to. So I'm creating a thirst. I'm creating this, I'm salting.
Did it work?
Throat for it did last night, and at the end they're like, we have to get together, right? We have to,
right.
Like, they felt the need to like offer me, like, we need to get together for lunch because I didn't hear anything about you and I've got lots of questions, right? And so just the ability to kind of pace yourself and say, can I allow other people to have that thirst and that interest grow in me as a person is actually where I'd rather be. I'd rather actually see that I'm becoming an interesting person in the course of this 30-minute conversation, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's not just that you were pushing the question back or really focusing on them more. I'm sure it was also the quality of the questions that you had. Like, Mikey, do you have a routine before you go into these social situations where you think of questions that you want to ask others or topics that you want to put on the table? Or how did you just come into that conversation and have question? You said you had something like 50 questions asked to the other person. Do those come to you naturally, or do you have a routine for that?
No, I don't know that I have a routine. I do get accused of doing this with new people all the time. And I sometimes feel like I'm interrupting because they're in the middle of explaining something and I want to show them that I'm with them. And so I'll interrupt with a secondary question and then a third level question almost before they're able to give their full answer. I have the tendency to do that.
I think that's fine.
But I think of it as interrupting a little bit, but I just really want to get them talking. I don't know if I'm doing it by design or if that's just the way that my brain kind of works. Last night, it was a head volleyball coach for a Division I volleyball school here in the area, who's a family member. And so how the portal works, how they actually treat the discussions of how NIL money is actually distributed among the girls on the team.
Interesting.
Whether or not they're allowed to talk about it. So for me, it starts with one question that I heard from somebody else. And then it gets into this idea of like, well, I know I have this in my past. I know I have this in my past. And I just didn't give them the opportunity to come back on me. But there was one moment in the conversation where they're like, you're asking such detailed questions, you must already have an idea. And I was like, I actually don't. I just have the questions. Right. And
now, my first question back to you would be, why are you wearing two pairs of glasses? But that would just be my question. I don't know if Sierra had that same question.
Because I want to be interesting.
But my question for Sierra is, the field note is entitled, make yourself more interesting in the new year. Is it okay? I mean, what do you think about the ethic of this, of just in general being like, all right, I'd like to be more interesting. Is that the right frame from which to approach this?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I had a visceral reaction to the title of this field note. Because something I live by is to be interested, not interesting.
Yeah.
Because people gravitate to those who, just like Mikey described, are truly interested in our story and how we think, in the experiences we've had and what motivates us, so on and so forth. But obviously, as you read the field note, it goes many levels deeper. It addresses that directly. What I like that it lands on is it's that to be interesting is to have a unique viewpoint on something, to have a truly unique opinion on something, which I never necessarily had a language for, but is something that I really appreciate in the people that I surround myself with. Because, if I'm at a ballet show, or if I've just come out of a movie theater, what I want to do immediately is dissect every piece. I want to talk about the choices that were made, the viewpoints that were there. If I'm with somebody who is just kind of reacting to the surface level, I find it to be much thinner, less rich. And I really enjoy when I get to somebody who says, well, actually, in this scene, they focused on this part of this person rather than what was going on in the background. And here's why that's interesting. and then I'm immediately drawn into them and I want to go see another movie with them. So
Mhm.
it spoke to an experience I've had for a long time, but maybe didn't have an exact language for.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that one of the things that is that level of their observational and attentional powers is that it adds value. And I think that this is one of the areas of this field note that's interesting, which is that it's not just that I have some arcane sort of area of mastery or knowledge, but that it's something where I have a viewpoint or advantage that says something about me and my own thoughtfulness, right? But it's actually showing a level of that I'm bringing something to the conversation. I'm not just bringing this up so that you go, oh, wow, this person is so fascinating, that I'm doing it in an additive way. And so I think that's probably the positional, difference. But I think that you could get this out of whack. But I think, as Mikey was kind of indicating, there's a degree of balance there. Now, this is a little bit like some of the things that we've talked about in other field notes in terms of just how we actually distinguish our views from other folks, and it's okay to try to have a take, which is sort of the modern parlance, that's sort of not the mainstream. But that you need to have a reasoned sense of judgment around that. But I think the question that I have for this whole positional thing from this field note for both of you would be, obviously we all have areas of our own expertise. Are you trying to come up with like new things or new hot takes, which seems a little manipulative, just to have a position or a take? And how do you authentically develop something so that if somebody's not interested in 17th century French poetry, that you have something else to say? Right? Well, how do you pick these areas? Because it says you can kind of just like start selecting or thinking. How would you go about doing that in a way that would be authentic?
Yeah. Have either of you seen Marty Supreme yet?
Not yet.
Not
Sierra?
yet.
Okay.
I am. Well, you could hardly not be. You could not be unaware. No, you could be aware. Could you be? I don't know. You could be aware. Yeah. No. Everyone's aware, I think, of the ping pong movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife and I came out of it 2 nights ago.
Right.
And we were in the theater at the same time my mom and dad were in the theater in California. So when we came out, we just happened to have a phone call with my parents, and they had just seen it. And so we were able to talk about it. Their impression of the movie was, it was good. It was fun. Like it was like surface. And I was ready to like talk about it. Like, so I'm geared to like the paragraph that talks about like finding insights and trying to find like real value in something is like, I just spent 2.5 hours watching this movie. So I feel like I need to justify the $15 or whatever that I spent by having a quality enough conversation that says that it's lasting for me. And I have. It's an odd movie. It's an odd movie from a story structure point of view. It's an odd movie from like choices that
casting?
the director made. Yeah, casting. Oh yeah, there's a couple different people in it that they're just kind of out of nowhere. You're like, oh, I didn't even realize.
Oh, they intentionally cast people that had never been in things before, like at all.
So it was a great movie, except for the fact that if you're looking for story structure to kind of fit a hero's journey kind of arc, you're not going to find it at all. And so those are the interesting choices that says, why do I like or dislike this movie? Why am I interested in this movie at all? There's no save the cat moment. You're familiar with the save the cat kind of thing. Like Marty is not, there's no save the cat moment at all. None of the characters are likable all throughout it. And by the time you get to the moment where you should be liking him, you don't really like him. And you're like, do I even like this moment? Right. And it's kind of like all these choices are coming at you from this idea of like, why in the world? So like this particular director has put us in this spot. Like I could like just dismiss him, but I actually want to have a conversation with him. So I come out of movies specifically to be like, let's talk about this director. Right. So Safdie is infinitely interesting to me because of the choices that he makes. And I could talk about this particular, and I'm kind of disappointed that the two of you haven't, because at the end of this, we could actually have.
Well, this was Marty like Sierra was hungry for this movie conversation, and now here it is. Yeah.
Sierra, go to the theater right now, and we'll have this conversation, right? But
we could turn the tables. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that it's a great conversation to have after it, but that's how I go into movies. I think everyone should go into movies that way, because I'm going to take for granted that the idea that the director is interesting and there's nothing not to talk about here, even if you hate the movie, right? Like I didn't particularly like the story, but I loved the movie, right? So there's like endless things to be able to talk about it. How could you not be curious about it and be able to talk? Like we just spent 2.5 hours forcing your perspective down my throat. I have to reflect on it and talk to it that way.
Yeah.
Right? It's fantastic.
I have a similar hunger for that depth coming out of any type of, I would say, entertainment, whether it's a live show or a movie. I had a similar feeling after watching Hamnet earlier this week. But to answer Scott's earlier question of how do you form this perspective without it feeling contrived, is I think you have to surround yourself with other people who are thinking on a deeper level, whether it's engaging in a book that is more challenging to read than you typically do, or is in a different style than you're typically used to reading. What patterns can you find there? What can you pay attention to as you read that book that pushes your thinking deeper? As you're listening to different podcasters, are they all of the mainstream podcasters that everyone's listening to? Or are they somebody who's really found their niche, who's able to draw insights that other people are not able to? What videos, movies, what art galleries are you going to? And are you engaging the artist and how they thought about creating that painting? Do you come in with your perspective of what you think it means before you ask that question? So I think if you're reading this field note and thinking to yourself, okay, I buy into it, I want to make myself more interesting in the new year by having more unique opinions, I think you have to stretch outside of your comfort zone when it comes to the media that you consume, when it comes to the people that you engage with, and the spaces that you're part of. Because I think that only through that and reflective thought, that's how you get that unique opinion.
Right. So I was a little disappointed that my parents didn't like have the same sort of opinions or thoughts or depth on the movie than I did. So I found myself like over talking. Like, so I was probably boorish to them in the way that I was talking about the movie instead of interesting. And I probably over talked the movie even in this conversation, right? Sounding a little bored. So when I have a passion for something and I feel like, oh, I could talk forever on it, it doesn't make me interesting unless I turn that off, right? Like what's a better way to do it, Scott, if you've got a ton of things to say about consciousness and no one else cares about the conversation about consciousness?
Yeah. Am I frozen? I think I might be frozen.
No, not at all.
Nope,
I'm not?
you're good.
Okay. You guys were frozen for a while, but it's cold where I am. But, well, one, I'm just want to go to movies with both of you because I think it'd be really interesting. And I do think that you can kind of put yourself in check and try to, that's what we talk about leaders all the time, judgment, self-awareness, just kind of being able to kind of sense the conversation. I don't think that you should go in. I've done the thing like you've done, Mikey. I know we're going overtime here, where I've just asked 50 questions and they never asked the question. And it was a great time. That's great. But I don't think you should be afraid either way. And I think that was the interesting thing I wanted to lean into, but we'll do it the next time, maybe, when Sarah was saying that she has this posture of saying, I'd like just to be interested. And so then when you say, well, maybe we should all ratchet up how we try to be thoughtfully interesting in a value-added way. And how does that make us feel? Because as she said, there was sort of this visceral reaction when you first see the headline. And I think that maybe that's the fun part here, is that this field note kind of gives us permission in this new year to say a way that we can actually be generous with other people is sometimes actually having a perspective that we bring to the conversation.
Great. Fantastic. All right. Once again, to everyone listening and to the both of you, Happy New Year. Thanks very much for your conversations. In 2025, I look forward to a bunch of them here in the coming year as well.
Dynamite.
Sounds great.
Bye now.